Welcome back again to Rinka's Kitchen. I have another family favorite recipe that I'd like to share with you, and it is called celebration cake, Ūnnepi Torta. So what I've got here is a recipe for one layer of the cake. So what you're going to need to do is mix all these ingredients that I'm going to be showing you, then put it into your cake pan and bake it, and then when it's finished baking, it looks like this. So this is your first layer. So this is what the first layer looks like. And then what I'm doing now is I'm going to put the same ingredients together as suggested in my recipe. So I'm going to share how to do that. So what I have here is 3/4 cups of butter, and what I did was I used a electric hand mixer, and I've beat the butter so that it's nice and fluffy. And then I added my 5 eggs, my 5 egg yolks, and then I'm going to add all my other ingredients to it. My rum, my vanilla, and so the rum is 3 tablespoons of rum and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, pure vanilla extract. And then the grated rind of a lemon. And then I'm going to add the powdered icing sugar to it. So that's 1/2 cup of powdered icing sugar. And then I'm going to add my ground pecan or almonds. And so this is 1.5 cups of ground almonds. So this is kind of like an almond recipe. Okay, so I've got that all in there, and so I'm going to start mixing this together. Now this is a great recipe to prepare for birthdays, special occasions, or just if you're having company, unexpected company coming over. This is a really easy recipe to make. So what I'm doing is I'm doing preparing the second layer of my celebration cake. Now you can double the recipe and put it all together in one bowl and then bake it and then cut it that way, but it's probably easier if you just do 2 separate cakes. So while you would be mixing this together, you'd have your first batch in the oven, and it would take about 35 to 40 minutes. So you test it with a toothpick to make sure it's ready. So at the center, check the cake at the center of the cake, and if the toothpick comes out clean, then it should be baked. So I'm mixing that together, and then I've got my 4 tablespoons of flour, and I'm going to add my 1/4 teaspoon of salt. You don't want too much salt because you've got the butter, the salted butter. If you're using unsalted butter, then you probably use a little bit more salt. So I'm just going to make sure to, just with a wooden spoon, you want to mix it together, and then you're going to add your egg whites. So I've kind of saved the egg whites from my 5 egg yolks. And then I'm going to fold in my egg white, and these are nice and stiff, into my batter. Fold it in gently. And then I've got my cake pan already greased and floured, and then I'm just going to put that in there, and I'm going to put it into an oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to bake it for about 35 to 40 minutes. I've already baked my first layer. If you have 2 of these cake pans, it's great to have that because you can put both of them in the oven at the same time. But I did two separate batches here, so then I get the exact amount for each cake. So that's done, and I'm going to pour that into my pan. And I preheated my oven to 365 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'm going to put my timer on to about 35 minutes. So test it at about 35 minutes. So with a toothpick, it's ready, and then take it out of the oven and let it cool down. You can make one big whole cake and then cut it, but this actually is an easier way if you want to get 2 layers. You can even do 3 layers if you wanted to. So I've done just 2 separate batches. So I'll mention that in the instructions of my recipe. And then it just goes into the oven, so it looks like that. And I'll let that bake for about 35-40 minutes. And what I will do is I will come back and I will show you after this has cooled down what to do, because this will be the actually the part where I'm going to be putting the raspberry jam on, the filling on it. And I'll talk a little bit about the different toppings that you can put on this cake. So I'll be back to show you what this great recipe looks like. Welcome back again to Rinka's Kitchen. I've been making a family favorite recipe, and it is called Celebration Cake, Ūnnepi Torta. So what I have here is 2 layers that I've baked individually, and I have a recipe for each of the layers that you want to bake. So there's exact measurement for each of the layers that I have here today. So you can make this a 3-layer cake, you can make it a 4-layer cake. Just use the ingredients that are mentioned in my recipe. So each layer consists of 3/4 cups of butter, and it's room temperature, at room temperature, and it is salted butter. 5 egg yolks, 5 egg whites, 1/2 cup of powdered icing sugar, 1.5 cups of ground almonds, grated rind of 1/2 lemon, 3 tablespoons of rum, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 4 tablespoons of flour, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt, or 1/4 teaspoon of salt in this case because I use salted butter. So what I have here is I've baked these individual sort of like cake slabs. And I'm going to make, I've decided to make just a 2-layer sort of cake, and it almost looks like a sort of a torte cake. And oh, it just smells just great in the kitchen right now with the almond. It's like toasted almonds. And you know, all the other ingredients that, the aromas that are in the kitchen are amazing from this recipe. So what I've done is I've put one of the cake sort of slabs onto a plate like this, and I put it on top of my cake pedestal. And then I've got my second cake slab. They've cooled down. This one has cooled down a little bit more than this one. So what I'm going to begin to do is I'm going to take a large spoon, and I mentioned it as a tip in my recipe that just put dollops of the raspberry. This is raspberry preserve jam, so it's a little bit more firm. And I'm using about 5 tablespoons. You can cut it down to 4 if you want. If you're making more layers, you might want to do 3 tablespoons each for each of the layers, so you can kind of divide it, use as much as you want. So I'm just going to spread this raspberry jam, just using a spoon. So it's this will kind of like almost look like a sort of a torte recipe. I'm just going to spread this evenly across my and you can use less if you want. You can make this a 3-layer cake, 4-layer cake, and put this in between the layers. You can use different types of jam. You can use apricot, peach, but for this specific recipe of my grandmother's, she used raspberry jam. And there's different kinds of berries in Hungary, sort of berry jams that you can buy. Like this rose hip jam. You know, you could probably get it at your local deli. Rose hip jam, which is sort of like a berry. And that's kind of nice too in there. So I've just kind of evenly distributed that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to slide this on the top, like so. Slide that on the top of the cake like that. And right away you've got a, just press it down a little bit. And that is your Ūnnepi Torta celebration cake. Now I'm choosing to put powdered icing sugar, but there is a recipe for sort of like, it's kind of like a 7-minute frosting recipe, and you need 2 egg whites, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and you use a double boiler, and you use a hand mixer, kind of like a hand mixer, to whip up the sort of like beat the egg whites stiff, and then you can put egg whites on it. But I'm choosing to just use powdered icing sugar on it, and this is amazing. This recipe is just it looks great. I'm using just 1 tablespoon of I think that's sufficient. But imagine that you can make it 3 layers if you wanted to, but this is what I've chosen to do here. So this is called celebration cake, and I've used my cake pedestal. Actually, I've used a little bit less than a tablespoon on mine, and you can see the jam. You want to use enough jam so you can see the jam on the sides of it coming out a little bit, and this is just amazing. And just kind of clean it up a bit at the side, and this can be served with your favorite tea or favorite coffee. It's a quick and easy recipe to do. So what I have in the recipe is a recipe for 1 slab. You want to use that same recipe for each of these slabs, the measurements. So you're getting the exact measurements for each of the slabs. So you could actually make up 2 separate ones like batches, and then if you've got 2 cake pans, you can put them both in the oven, let them cool down. And when you're removing it from the pan, you're going to need to let it really cool down, and you're going to need to use kind of like something like this. This is great. This is sort of like a bread cutter, but cut underneath inside and use this sort of like a spatula. You're going to slowly take it off your cake pan. That's just a tip. But make sure and these plates are great because, like you saw, I I slipped the other one on to the other one. So I took one of these plates and I slipped it onto the top like that. So that's kind of like a little another kind of tip that you can do to put one layer on top of the other. So if you have any questions or comments regarding this recipe, please feel free to contact me at Irene@arinkaskitchen.com or arinkaskitchen.com. And so that's my email address and my website address. And there is a tip button. If you look on my website, you'll see a big word in green, in the green box. It says tip. And there's a little red button, and what you do is you, with your mouse, or if you've got one of those touch screen computers, you can touch it, and then what it does is it brings up all the tips for my recipes. So if you're looking for a recipe that you want and you want to know what the tips are, my husband spent probably over 2 weeks designing that. So it's great to it's just quick and easy tips for each of the recipes that I've so far put on the website. So also I'd be happy if you could share any of my recipes with your family or friends or co-workers. And if any of you are interested in subscribing to my website, because you will be automatically notified of any of my new recipes that are coming up. So I hope to see you again. Until next time, take care and bon appetit and jo eet vadet.